Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Checkpoint. The hashtag to use on Twitter is Checkpoint. On SMS, the number is 22155. We're analyzing the state of the nation, 51 years of Madaraka, and today we will be discussing quite a bit, and we hope to get through as much as we possibly can and to also incorporate your views. My guest tonight on Checkpoint, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, who's a senator, and also Senator Kithure Kindiki. Thank you both for making the time to be with us. Let's get straight into it now that Baba is back and now that Baba is here. Yesterday, there was a talk of national dialogue. Now, I know members of CORD are saying this has been misinterpreted and that this is Nusumkati. I'd like to give you a chance, Senator, to respond to that as to what exactly national dialogue means. What would be the terms of that?
Well, you know, I'm glad that Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga sent his official speech to the media so that it is not misunderstood. But you see, Yvonne, we have some very urgent issues of national importance that we think we should discuss as a nation. The issue of security is not something that we can only leave for Parliament. It's a national issue requiring the participation of everybody, particularly the major parties in the nation. The issue of corruption is very important. The issue of national unity. I think the nation is now more divided than ever before. I think there's a deep gap among the people in the nation. And the issue of cost of living. I mean, you cannot postpone these things. Unfortunately, when the NAC government was in power, fortunately, we established the National Economic and Social Council, which ran through the NAC to the coalition government. But apparently, the Jubilee government has not found it necessary to have that body
and so,
exist.
Senator, the dialogue would be to what end?
That's what I'm trying to tell you. The dialogue would be to come with a joint program and program of action to deal with these issues, which we will all endorse. Because I think quite often we are talking at cross purposes for no reason. And I think it would be important that we take this initiative. And we gave a period of not more than 2 months. The quicker the government can move, the better, because I think it's a very urgent issue.
All right, and we'll come back to, that deadline that's been given by CORD in just a moment. Senator Kindiki, why is Jubilee against the idea of dialogue? Is it the belief that Jubilee has all the solutions and does not want to get any ideas from others in the country?
Thank you, Yvonne. I don't know where you've got the idea that Jubilee is against dialogue, because everybody who has spoken, from the president to myself today in Tharaka Nithi and many other leaders, including Andantwale Indujis, we have said, one, we have been encouraging dialogue. And in fact, on some of the issues which CORD is saying, we believe there are even other issues, including, for example, the issue of the wage bill under the new constitution, which is too heavy on the people of Kenya. We are having one of the most expensive constitutions in the world. So the idea of dialogue is not a new thing. What is new are ultimatums, threats, and incitement of the public and the ferrying of young men into stadia to excite them and cheat them that somebody somewhere has taken away what belongs to them, and pretending as if the country is celebrating 1 year of independence, yet we know we are celebrating 51 years of independence. In other words, what the Jubilee government is trying to resolve are problems which have been created over the last 50 years by people like Professor Anyang' Nyong'o and others who have been government ministers for decades.
All right,
in this
and
country.
we'll also get to some of the promises that the Jubilee government made that are yet to be realized. However, in the beginning you did say that it is very clear that Jubilee is up for dialogue. However, yesterday, right after the Uhuru Park statement that was made by the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, the Deputy President was on record as saying there will be no dialogue. Today we see the President saying there will be dialogue, but within certain limitations.
Again,
is this a government at cross purposes, Senator Kindiki?
And we are entitled to put the facts correct. The same way CORD is entitled to clarify what they meant. Our understanding, and I listened very well and watched the statements mainly by the former Prime Minister and the former Vice President, especially the former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka said, you know, we cannot have a government which doesn't represent everyone in Kenya, so we need to sit down all of us and then have everybody on board. And then, of course, once bitten, twice shy. This country tried an experiment with a grand coalition.
Senator, allow me to interject, because my question was about the deputy president, William Ruto, saying yesterday,
precisely.
No dialogue,
I even said it
and
myself.
today the president
I even said it
dialogue.
myself yesterday, but my own statement today is reviewed in line with the clarification that Raila and people like Professor Nyong'o have made after yesterday. But yesterday's, what we got from CORD yesterday is that they want us to sit down, create an imaginary crisis, and start now forming some grand coalition government like what we had under Kibaki, full of quarrels, trouble, and competition.
Senator Anyang' Nyong'o, where do you think this idea of perhaps reviving a coalition government came from? Could it be perhaps from Kalonzo Musyoka's statement saying, you know, that a government cannot be formed with more than 60% of the people outside of it? And then this is what he said: if there will be no dialogue by Saba Saba, wataenda nyumbani. Do you think that's a statement that could have made people uncomfortable in the country?
I've always said that it is not good, really, to try and seek simple solution to complex problems, like my friend is trying to do. Of course, I can understand Jubilee's worry about a government of national unity, because they're already quarreling about what they have. I mean, there is carcass being shared. The meat is small, so I know the worry is there, but we don't want to have a government, no national union or a grand coalition. No, we don't. I mean, I would like to be in that government, actually, the way I see it. I mean, so much crisis that I don't think anybody in CORD has the temerity to want to be there. I don't think so. But what we mean is that when you think of government of Kenyans, and Ruto himself today said the government must be for all Kenyans, when you examine government as a whole, not just the cabinet, go down to parastatals, to the civil service, to ministries and so on, it is a shame, especially given what the Constitution provides. The skewedness in government is terrible if you look at the diversity among Kenyans. Just the other day, Jubilee was quarreling over just one person because one part of the coalition felt that their person was left out. Many Kenyans, by their Yvonne, feel left out in this government in terms of appointments. You just need to go to the Treasury or the office of the President or the cabinet itself. You'll ask yourself, if you really read the Kenyan Constitution correctly, is this really the way to begin reforming the civil service, reforming government? And this Constitution was established so that there should be reforms in this country in line with the spirit of the new Constitution, which expects an inclusive government.
Okay.
Yvonne, just a small one. Uhuru Kenyatta has barely touched on the civil service of Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga, except the PSCs, which by virtue of the Constitution had to apply afresh and go through competitive interviews by the Public Service Commission and shortlisted from that point. Uhuru Kenyatta has not appointed over 200 parastatal heads as we speak, some due to legal reasons and also due to the pending reform and restructuring, because he believes in a leaner and more efficient.
So is this an emergency? Is this an imaginary crisis?
It's an imaginary. And even the cabinet issue, the standards that the president is supposed to meet when in terms of national diversity are there. It's one of the conditions. And if any person really feels maybe that threshold has not been met, they can go to court for an interpretation. So let us not create an imaginary mentality that somehow there have been some jobs which have been given to some people and others left out. That's not true.
You've talked before, and you said just a short while ago about Jubilee taking on the problems of the previous administrations. However, there's been a spike in insecurity, terrorism cases. There is a promise that was made by the Jubilee government itself, laptops. There's the high cost of living that we're seeing now. And a lot of people say, look, there's quite a bit of reaction rather than being proactive in this fight. Case in point, take a look at statements that have been made by the Inspector General on tinted windows. That is rescinded. Recently on public or political rallies, that was then rescinded by State House. It looks like it's a government that's at odds with itself and not in control. And perhaps that is what CORD might be referring to?
That's not true. Three things. One, the insecurity problem, the Jubilee government has employed last year alone 10,000 new police officers.
However, we still see increased attacks.
Just a moment. 1,200 new vehicles with fuel in 1 year. And from 1st of July, every police officer on life insurance. That has not worked as we thought up to now, because that's the equipment part. There are other structural and institutional issues around the issue of police reforms.
Okay.
And that's why we are saying this dialogue that COD is talking about is dialogue that has helped us to do the structure and the legal issues. And I've expected, actually, instead of doing a rally in Horo Park or Bungoma, we would want legislation. Just a moment. We would want, I would be happy to see a bill on national security sponsored by the leader of minority in the Senate or in the National Assembly. I'll be the first one to support it.
Here, though, even as you talk about the reforms within the police sector, there's still a great feeling of insecurity. There's still a great number of attacks that have taken place in the country over the last year or so. Many Kenyans have lost their lives, not to mention Westgate, one incident alone. Take a look at Wajir and Mandera, a crisis that's going on as we speak. The reforms you're talking about are perhaps not being felt by the Kenyans.
Yeah, they are not felt about, but we had support defense forces in 2005. We have had bad Kikambala. We have had the 1998 bomb blast. I think it's good to put things in context, Yvonne, by saying, in a nutshell, whatever Uhuru Kenyatta has done in the past 1 year can only be appreciated in the sense that 1 year is not enough just to resolve all the security issues, altogether. I want to mention something very quickly that is important. If you read, and that's why I should encourage my brothers here and sisters, just be sober. Don't use the 1980 tactics of inciting people and exciting poor youth in rallies. Because the window now is open, the constitutional window. Even if Jubilee was not interested in carrying dialogue, the window is there. I want to say, just a moment, before he replies, I want to say, if I tabled the report of the president on national security last year, which he tabled in both houses, and I know paragraph 44 of that report on national security says what he wants to do now, he wants to reform the structure of the security sector, especially the National Intelligence Service.
Okay.
I thought,
all right,
in fact, they should have now picked that from there and give us ideas on how this reform can be done, maybe through bills or motions.
Jubilee saying revolution and the significance that you put towards Saba Saba. Everybody's asking now, what happens if this dialogue does not take place by Saba Saba? What's the new strategy that we hope to see from CORD? Are you planning to take reins of the government by illegitimate means?
You know, Yvonne, it's important to say the truth. The government has said they want dialogue, isn't it? So if they want dialogue, saying we should have a dialogue within 2 months should not be a problem. Saba Saba should not scare them. Apparently, they are very scared of the power of the people. It is the power of the people that brought the Constitution.
But what would happen, Senator, if we don't have the dialogue by then?
The point is, you know, sometimes some questions are rhetorical. They're rhetorical in the sense that both parties have said they want dialogue, isn't it? All we said is, let us have this dialogue within 2 months by this date, because the government has been saying they want dialogue, without any structure of dialogue being put down.
Okay.
And it is important that when you make a statement, you give somebody a time framework. In administration and management, time framework is important.
So for
now,
you,
if that time framework is frightening them, well, I would be very surprised, because they shouldn't be frightened. Secondly, it is very unfortunate that my dear friend Senator Kindiki is speaking very disparagingly about the people, very disparagingly about the youth. These are Kenyans with their right under the Constitution to assemble and speak. That is a constitutional right. If they exercise that right with their leaders, and you sit here and you talk disparagingly about them, that says a lot about your regime.
All right, Senator, the role as well of the opposition in terms of keeping the government in check. the opposition hasn't had a very good run lately, and will to specifically ODM's failed elections, and now ODM being the same one that is talking about disbanding the IEBC. We don't seem to have alternative solutions, is what a lot of Kenyans are saying from CORD.
Very interesting.
In terms of how would we deal with Anglo-leasing, for example?
Very interestingly, you know, we recently released what we call the lies that Jubilee tells. A very detailed document, which I'd like to hand over to my friend, because you and him believe we don't have alternatives. Yet when we do things like this and we send them to newsrooms, you don't read them. You still ask the same questions 3 weeks later. And my friend says we don't have alternatives. We haven't analyzed the president's speech.
No,
please, no, please, because that is the dismissive attitude. No. It's very interesting. Very interesting that Jubilee is a know-all government. It doesn't matter what you do. They know everything. So it's very interesting that this document, he says he has read it and there's nothing in it.
You see,
it's very, very interesting, Yvonne, because I know there is something in it.
Yvonne, two things. One, I have read this document. There are no alternatives here. And I have said again, and I want to repeat, CORD has significant numbers in the National Assembly and the Senate. If they wanted to seriously use these numbers to help this country move to the next level, they can do a tremendous job.
But we are doing
in the sense that I have not seen a single bill.
There are 3 bills
sponsored by the leader of minority, because you see, those are private members' bills.
Those are members'
private members' bill. That's fine. Yeah, but I'm saying I have not seen a party position where you come and say this is what CORD we've discussed and believe is a solution of this and this problem. And I want to say, look at insecurity, for instance, because my brother here, whom I respect a lot, is accusing us of knowing it all and being arrogant. We are not arrogant. We are very humble.
We're very arrogant, actually.
We're very humble.
Because the last 2 days, in fact, just yesterday and today, if you listen to what you people were saying, I was surprised that it's a presidential, presidential material.
Well, that's a topic for another day.
Too,
Yvonne,
what you're
let
saying.
me finish. Let me finish that, you know, the problem with CORD is what I would call the Pharisee syndrome. Those who have read the Bible, the Pharisee syndrome, the holier-than-thou deceptive syndrome.
Some would say the same.
If we are here talking about, insecurity and the lapses that we have seen in our borders, and the scams in the immigrations and the passport control processes, you want to ask yourself, who has been the Minister for Immigration for the last so many years?
All right, okay. But let's also...
just a moment. But now today, CORD wants to come here, pontificate, simply because they were defeated in an election.
However,
they want to pontificate and show the public and deceive the public.
Allow me to interject. It's all well and good to talk about the past, but right now, Jubilee is the one in power. So let's move from the issues that are plaguing Kenyans today and what solution. That's right.
History. We don't want people to mislead Kenyans.
I agree with you.
That these things were born by Jubilee.
Even though the problems originated in previous regimes, you are the ones in charge right now.
Resolve them.
And yes,
the new registration system, the president has announced. Last month we broke ground to the forensic lab thing that stalled 10 years ago. And so forth and so forth. So we are working on these things.
Right.
The speed could have been better. And I think this spirit which is coming now, you know, although incidentally, because CORD realized that people are not interested in this coalition thing, so they switched gears and started talking about discussing. So I want to say this spirit might help us to speed up. And we want to welcome CORD together with other stakeholders like trade unions and other stakeholders to help us so that we can speed up.
I would like us to shift gears with this conversation for just a moment, because you've given a glowing report, and even when the government itself did its one-year assessment, talked about some of the things they did right.
And the challenges.
And yes, I'd like you to address the challenges right now. As we close our discussion, I'd like you to address the challenges.
Can I make one
very
correction?
Quickly. All right.
Very correction. You know, quite a number of projects that Jubilee is now say they're implementing. These are projects that were initiated during the last government. The thing is that government projects do take time to fruition. Fortunately, they are borne fruit in their government, and we credit them for that. But they should not really tell the lie that these are Jubilee projects. No, they were there in the Grand Coalition.
Okay.
They're part of Vision 2030, which they are now murdering. Unfortunately.
So in the same way, they're placing the blame on some of the ills of the last regime is the same way.
I
Okay.
just said we broke ground
Senator,
for the lab.
Senator, let's talk about the challenges that Jubilee has faced over the last 1 year. And as we conclude, how then you're going to be able to sort that out? There's a lot of Kenyans today who are unsafe, going to the market, being in a matatu, being at a shopping mall. No matter where you are, there's the very real threat of insecurity, which did not exist in previous regimes, not almost entirely, but which has had, we've seen a greater spike in the last 1 year since Jubilee took power. What are you telling the Kenyans today about the challenges you faced? Talk about that and tell us how you're going to address them so that the next time we're sitting here 1 year from today, we'd have a different discussion.
Thank you. The issue of insecurity, Yvonne, is very worrying, and we don't want to pretend that it doesn't worry us to see Kenyans living in fear and fearing leaders to venture out and enjoy their lives and enterprise. Other than escalating the number of police people and the cameras that the president has said are being installed all over the country, one area which must be reformed is the security sector, especially with regard to the responses that our men and women in uniform make towards national emergencies like terrorist attacks. Because what we saw in Westgate was very embarrassing, to say the least. Nobody will really wish that that was a good thing. That for 4 days, a bunch of 4 terrorists take hostage of the whole country. Okay. And the problem was because of lack of coordination, and that is a legal problem. Because the KDF Act, if you read it with the Police Act, doesn't provide for a way in which the military, the police, the paramilitary can work together in an operation in a seamless manner.
I need to rush you because we're running out of time. So if we can just get to...
So we are introducing a bill on a national security emergency service bill to try and provide a legal framework that will help us respond to emergencies more successfully.
An issue that is purely Jubilee's alone, laptops. When will Standard 1 children get laptops?
As soon as the court cases and the battles between contractors end. We have to follow the law.
Do you agree that's a place that Jubilee has not met?
Of course, it's a challenge, but it's not our making. This thing went to courts of law. You have to wait for courts of law to...
But see, the thing is, Senator, why did they go to the courts of law? You know, lawyers have a very interesting way of outsourcing their problems to courts. Why did they go to court law? Courts exist to solve social problems, legal problems, which arise from society. In this case, madam, they were from corruption. Corrupt deals in getting laptops. That is why they went to courts. And that is... Well, I'm sure you are not aware.
What I'm aware of is that some contractors challenged those who won the tender, and we are waiting
Senator, let's wind up with your comments, Senator Anyang' Nyong'o, on just the way forward and the new strategy that we hope to see with the national dialogue that you're talking about, and you know, which way forward with the country in terms of the opposition keeping the state in check and making sure that citizens get their fair share.
No. The way forward is the following. Please don't misunderstand the role of an opposition in a liberal democracy. It is to keep the government in check. But it is not the responsibility of the opposition to make the government perform its duties. The government must rise up to the occasion and not wait for the opposition to remind it all the time what it should be doing. Kenyans have been feeling that since the government performing poorly, it is the duty of the opposition to ensure that it performs well. Yes, but the government has a commitment to the people to follow the constitution and the rule of law. If they don't do that, they have no business being in government.
All right, and that is where we leave our discussion tonight. Keep your comments coming in as we continue with our discussion on Checkpoint, the state of the nation, which way forward after 51 years of self-rule. I will be sampling your comments. I want to thank my guest, Senator Anyang' Nyong'o, Senator Kithure Kindiki, for coming in to Checkpoint tonight. Taking a short break, KTN Weekend Prime returns shortly.